Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Massive kitchen time. These are all the plants that I brought home from Geoff's, and I don't trust that they haven't got snails in the pot or amongst the canes or anything, because we did see quite a few snails in that greenhouse. As a consequence, I want them out of their pots, hydrogen peroxide, and that gets rid of snails and any little slugs that might be in there. They make a nice fizz. Get them cleaned up basically, and in some cases out of what is very soggy media. So this session is getting stuff out of the pots. I mean, some of it, technically speaking, doesn't need repotting as far as the plant's concerned, but I don't trust what's in the media. Bugs, I mean, not... And some of them have got failing root systems because they're far too wet at this time of year. So, although Geoff's greenhouse is quite well automated with timers on lights, most of the plants there are under lights of some description, so the short days wouldn't be affecting them perhaps as much as it might do. Right, so this is absolutely sopping wet, and it's a cattleya. So an element, I'm keeping my hands relatively clear of this because inside of here is rock wool, the little cubes of a sponge-like material, as far as I'm concerned, should be up in the roof insulating it, but it does make for a good media, but I am allergic to it and I will get a rash. But I do know that if it's wet, it doesn't affect me. So I'm okay now, but if this was dry I'd have to just do it under the tap because I can't touch the flipping stuff. It's horrible. Right, so we've got quite a lot of dead roots in the middle. We've got quite a lot of dead roots, but we have got some live roots. We've got no actively growing roots as such, but these are viable roots. They're not soggy, you know, they're not squishy, but all this lot in here are. So that'll have a rinse under the tap, hydrogen peroxide in case there's anything's lurking, and get the worst of the media out. I want that rock wool gone in case I ever come across it again and forget it was ever there, and I do something with this plant in 2 years' time when it's dry, which would be for me how I would normally work. I don't like working with wet root systems. But I do sometimes soak roots to allow them to become more pliable. But I don't like working with wet roots, basically. What's my hand looking like? So far, so good. Yeah, lots of dead roots to trim off. So major trim, and this will go in a holy clay pot. So that's one. That was the thing, the green one. Pot in our cat green power, spelt with a K. Not the green and the power, the cat. And variety big triple G with a hyphen between triple and G. Why? So that's that one. I don't need to keep the tag with the plant because I know what it is. It's the only big cattleya I brought home. Right, into the smaller cattleyas, and I've got two incredibly similar plants here that have got totally different names, so these will have to have their tags kept together. Now this, as I said, it has a look about it that it just looks like BC Mackay. It isn't. It's related, I suppose you could say. But again, we've got a root system, but it's not an actively growing root system by any means. But it's not bad, and effectively new roots should form when new growth start. You know, so we will get some more roots down the line. Strange concept here. We've got the largest pieces of bark at the top of the plant. I normally put small bark around the base of the plant, simply because the new roots are small and delicate and like to thread their way through smaller pieces, and then as the roots become larger and more chunky, they can grab hold of the larger stuff farther down. That's the way I work anyway. Anyway, some cleaning up to do. I'm getting as much of this old stuff out as possible because it's a place where the hydrogen peroxide might miss a bit. You know, and you can guarantee if you miss a bit on a root system, that will be where the one snail is. That's how they work. They know our game, but we know their game. Right, so that's that one. That needs to stay with its tag. Because there's another one that's very similar in appearance anyway. So that's 2. So let's get that other one that looks similar done. This is, mind you, there is a distinct difference. This one has actually got a spike on it with some buds. This is a Pro Catavola. The Pro may well be Prosthetia. In fact, it's highly likely to be Prosthetia, or it may have been called that once and then it may have changed. It may have been called Encyclia before it got called Prosthetia, and then it may well have been changed again, because they will not leave that set of plants alone. You just keep chopping and changing them, which amazes me, because if you're doing DNA type stuff, well, surely you only need to do it once and make your flipping mind up. Keep chopping and changing all the time. It gets on your throat knees. But as I said, I will be calling this what it says on the label, and that's what it will be called. And most of these roots are dead as a door now. There's very little active roots here, very little. I'll keep sort of these up round here, but all of this can go. This is just dead. So that's that one. Then we get on to the soggy stuff. And by soggy stuff I mean stuff that's in moss and it is dripping wet. I think what's been happening round there is Ken has been using the sprinkler system, which is non-determinant in it. So if you put the sprinklers on, everything gets wet. Oh, this is absolutely... I could wring this out. 2 plants. Might not have been 2 plants. It may have rotted across the base, but very poor roots, very poor. So sheaths off to stop the base of the plant staying wet with Oncidium types. Until they've got active growth on them and a good root system that works well and the plant is growing, when they're sitting still, sheaths around the base of the pseudobulbs are just a rot magnet basically. So we've got a couple of new roots showing there, not many. So again, a bit of a rinse off. Do we have a name for this? Oh no, we've got no ID for this. Oh, this is 3 plants. You know what this is, don't you? These were pieces off of a plant, I suspect, that Geoff has put in a pot of moss to get some roots going to come back to later. Well, that he won't be doing, will he? But we've got 3 pieces of an unknown Oncidium type orchid, and it's a miniature. Irrespective of the fact this is probably pieces that were put in there to get some roots and then forgotten about probably, nonetheless it is a miniature. These pseudobulbs are not going to get a lot bigger than that. So that's what we've got. Moss doesn't smell ridiculously gone. I think this is just that the way they've been looked after recently is not really appropriate for some of the plants. But when when you've got your own plants to look after, and your own life to lead, obviously you've just got to do the best you can as quick as you can. So 3 little plants there. They'll go back in the same pot. They may even get mounted, quite honestly. Miniature Oncidium type, like a twinkle, perfect for a mount. So those 3 may get mounted. Ugh. Right, coffee. Yeah. Crikey, that's strong. That's down to the bottom of the jar, and I had to sort of scrape the dregs out of the bottom of the jar because I can't be bothered to fill it up at the moment. So I think I overdid it a bit, it's a bit strong. Never mind. Right, what have we got here then? This is relatively fresh moss. Doesn't mean to say we're going to have good roots. Oh shit, this is packed in absolutely solid. This must have been forced down with a fist. I don't know whether we're going to find many good roots in here. I can see that there are a few. I don't think we're going to get a lot. I'm going to have to get the surgery tools out in a minute. I hope we're not going to get lots of pieces. I mean, according to the label, this is highly likely to be Odontoglossum naeviem, which I've already got, but mine is not as good a plant as this, although mine does have better roots. So it is highly likely to be that. That's the nearest thing I can see. The abbreviation on the label, which I just think is stupid on a label. You know, the label could potentially follow the plant to a show, and you don't use abbreviations. You have to put the full name on. So why not just do it? Just do the label once and do it properly. But basically it's got ODM, which is probably Odontoglossum. I've got a table where I can look those abbreviations up if I choose to. My idea would be not to use them, then I wouldn't have to. But nonetheless, this is probably naeviem. I mean, it's quite a large plant actually. These roots are viable. They're actually okay. So this should take quite nicely to a repot. It's got lots of new growth on it, so it will actually be pushing out new roots as well as what it's already got. But this is my problem. This is soggy. So I've got to get that off without it bursting, which means cutting it right at the very base, which means I need all the moss around it out the flipping way, so I can see what I'm doing. Yes, it's been buried too deep. This bulb's rotting as well. You shouldn't bury these things deep. It's sitting nicely on the top. Or the material that's round the base of the plant, which is good for encouraging roots to go down instead of heading skyward, yes, but it should be very, very loosely packed. That way it's got air in there as well, and it doesn't keep the plant soggy, which wouldn't happen. I mean, if you think of these plants in the wild, the airflow they've got is quite incredible in the cooler jungle areas. You know, you've got a constant flow of air rising upwards. And a lot of people are quite surprised when they go to those type of forests the first time, because they have to hold their hat on. Whereas they were expecting to walk around in shorts and a little short sleeve t-shirt. It's not as warm as it seems because of the breeze. So they start getting a bit chilly and rush for the cardi. Right, that's all I'll do here. I just want to get that. I've got a feeling, yeah, we've got multiple plants here as well. That's not joined, that piece. It's joined by tangled roots. It's not joined by a rhizome. Look at the rot in here. It's another piecelet. See, this is naughty because Geoff provided an awful lot of plants for our shows. Well, in a show you're not supposed to present multiple plants potted together or mounted together. It's you know, there are exceptions. Things like the Pleiades, that's the right word. The tuberous type things, you know, the underground terrestrial type things that they just push their blooms up before the leaves come out, then the leaves come out, and then the whole thing dies back. Yeah, this is just lots of little pieces. This is. Yeah. So this almost looks as though this was deliberate. Quite a few plants were bought, probably quite small, and then all bundled up together, put in one pot to look like a specimen plant, which is naughty. I'm one of those, I don't need awards at shows that bad. A lot of the time I don't put any plants into shows because they're not quite right. You know, they're either not open properly or starting to go over, and I just sort of think, you know, if your plant's not in really almost perfect condition, then for me, it just makes the show display, which of course is open to the public, a little inferior, if you know what I mean. It's oh, that's handy. I don't have to cut that off. It's going to come off anyway. So trouble is, that's a good bit of plant there. You're just going to break off nicely. Yes, you are. Jolly good. Done. You need to come off as well because you're all black and rotten. But that does leave quite a nice little piece there with a new growth. This one's hard work, isn't it? So it's just the rot that's got in there for burying it too deep. I mean, sometimes with the Oncidium types, it's difficult to know what the hell to do when you're trying to pot them up because they end up climbing. So you end up with a piece of the plant with some roots on that you can pot quite nicely, but the new growth is sort of 2 inches above the media. And the only way you can get those roots down in the pot, and that's got some nice roots on it, that piece, is to actually tip it over sideways. And then it looks daft. But the new growth, under those circumstances, the new growth will straighten itself up. Right, so we have a bundle of those to do something with. And most of the bits that I've thrown away are either rotten or I'm not happy with. So I mean, that's got a new growth on it. It's got a couple of roots. Oh, actually, that's salvageable. It's got another little new growth starting there as well as that one. And cut that dead bit of rhizome off there. And it's got a couple of roots to go down in the pot. I may not keep all those pieces, but the sheer volume of moss that was in one pot was jammed in so hard. But then those roots were still growing, so it wasn't totally wrong, was it? But a lot of it just depends on the watering. And how careful or not you are at said watering. Because some things just don't like to get wet. Now this, as it's got two labels saying the same thing, is definitely Encyclia lancifolia. Because it says so twice, so I'll believe that. So nice species, Encyclia. We've got two leads on here. That's the latest growth on that lead, mature with a sheath, and this one's catching it up. So two leads and not much of a root system, not much at all. Oh, let's got that flipping rock wool again. The use of the rock wool is quite correct in as much as it doesn't break down. Apparently if it dries out totally in a pot, it's a pig to get to be wet again. So it's obviously suitable for things that don't need a proper wet-dry cycle, because if you get it dry and pour water in it, apparently it goes straight through and out the bottom and is incredibly difficult to wet. Nonetheless, for something like, I mean, I know Alan uses it for his specimen cotyledons because they can stay in there like 10 years before he even has to think about them. So it allows things to grow into huge specimen plants without ever having to have their roots disturbed or be repotted. That's an incredibly poor root system, almost non-existent. There's signs of some root growth on these latest two leads, but nothing up the back end, nothing at all. This is all dead. I will leave some of it so that I've got something to grab hold of in the pot, but yeah, most of that's dead. So that's the Encyclia. Salvageable and a nice plant, you know. So at the moment it's a healthy looking plant, but I don't think it would stay that way too long if it was just left like that, because it just hasn't got a root system worth talking about. You're totally reliant on that new set from those couple of leads, and this is this strange thing, Anachylium, I'm told that's pronounced, and the Pachycandra bit is just wrong. I've looked up that genus. It's classed as a synonym amongst several others. So it's another one of these they haven't made their flipping mind up yet, or it's been renamed over the years and they've left the names as synonyms. That does happen sometimes. But the last part of that, there is no such thing. But there is a species that starts with P-A-C-H-Y. So I've assumed that's what it was. And what was probably going on here is a label maker with auto-correct function, and it auto-corrected it wrong and wasn't spotted. There's a good thought. Yeah, that can happen. Must have been a flashy label maker to have that function on it. But this has got a very poor root system in as much as it's soggy. It will depend how long it's been soggy. Oh, it's got that rock wool in it again. It's a good job this is wet. Come to think of it. I'd have blotchy mitts by now otherwise. Horrible stuff. I hope this is one plant. This one, it would be nice. But this is not a good root system. This is just been wet too long. It's gone. In the main, which is silly given what it's been potted in, was deliberately designed so that it wouldn't stay soggy. But now that I've come across a new growth, we've got root stumps. So it's coming into root growth. And if you think about it, there's a new growth there, and there, and there, and another one in the middle of the plant. If that genuinely is the middle of the plant and not the edge of plant number 2. So we are coming into root growth right now. So these roots are going to get replaced. I just hope they get replaced soon enough, if you know what I mean. So I've just found a old rotten bulb in the middle here. Well, it's not actually rotten, but it's not required. And this is 2 plants. Damn. I could just keep it together because most of these roots, the trouble is if the roots are going to get cut off in the main, by the time I've cut most of the roots off, it will then fall apart because the roots won't be there to hold it together anymore. So it's probably going to fall apart anyway. I will treat it as one plant until it decides to fall into 2 pieces. 2 or more pieces. These little bulbs around the back are coming off. New growth is well attached to those 3 bulbs, but it does wobble there. But it's not actually, this is the bit, see that just looks like 2 plants to me. We shall see. I mean, if it grows new roots, then they'll all tangle up together, and you know, next time it gets repotted, it'll be even more tightly joined together. It's just going to have to go in quite a big pot. Quite woody, these roots in places, and very black. I don't know whether much of these are any good or not. But we do know we're going to get some new ones off of the new growths, simply because that one's telling us there. So we will get some new roots, and if there's 4 new growths, that's 4 sets of roots. That might bring it back. But a lot of these are going to have to come off. I don't think there's hardly anything viable on there. Right, so that's the mess done. That's the easy bit, quite honestly. And now what we need to do now is give them all a wash, give them a good going over with the hydrogen peroxide. Which won't work as well as it should on wet plants. So it's actually AM, it's not even 10 o'clock in the morning yet. So what I might do is just lay these plants out on some newspaper, because obviously the house is quite warm and the air in the house is reasonably dry. They might dry off a bit in 3 or 4 hours, enough that the hydrogen peroxide will work better. Because the problem is when something's wet, the 3% dilution basically gets watered down because the surface it's getting sprayed onto is wet, if you see what I mean. So it's given that that's the minimum strength that's going to do any good. I mean, some people use 5%. See, now if I had 5%, I'd quite happily spray that on wet plants, you know, on plants that have still got wet roots, because it would still work. But 3%, you know, you start diluting that any further and it's probably not going to do much at all. Right, so that'll be part 1 What part 2 will consist of, I don't know. It may just be some examples of repotting these. To film all of those being repotted, and certainly in at least one case mounted, probably 3, 3 cases of mounted orchids, maybe 4. I think that's probably what I'll do. Those that are going in pots can be like part 2 or 3, and then those that are going on mounts can be the other bit. That'll do 3 videos out of this lot. And who knows, we may be adding some more plants in by the time we get to Tuesday morning. I must remember to wear my mask tomorrow, because Ken's already sent me an email saying, could I leave my car outside this time? I mean, I've got nothing to unload this time, so that's fair enough. And if I do take some plants, it'll only mean carrying 1 box. But he said, could I leave my car outside because it's going to get busy? Yeah, well, we made the mistake yesterday of just forgetting to put our masks on. There were 3 of us there as well. That's 3 households, 3 separate things, you know. We should have had our masks on. Which Lynn told us about in no uncertain terms as soon as she got there. Where's your masks? So I had to explain that having forgotten for this long, it wasn't worth putting them on now. And sort of, you know, if there was any damage, it was already done. But I mean, all 3 of us know what we're doing as far as looking after our own individual selves are concerned. And people like that get a bit closer together than perhaps they should are as safe as it can be. You know, it's the mixing with random people who you have no idea who they've mixed with or where they've been. They're the ones to worry about. Treat them all as hostiles. Right, so that's that one done. I don't know when this is going to get posted. It won't be today. I've already got a repotting video. I think it's a Cattleya going in a holy clay pot that I filmed in the middle of last week that I haven't managed to post yet. So that's going up today because I want to clear the space out. And then I'll work on this one. I've also got another, what else have I got? I've got the last part of the final updates for the project orchids. I've got that to do, but I haven't even started that yet. So that's probably going to be late this week or next week. And then I can clear all of that project stuff out and get all that space freed up, and we'll be selecting some new ones for next year. Anyway, see you next time, stay safe, and I'll get this lot cleaned up, sprayed, and then decide what's going in a pot and what it's going in that pot, and what ones are going on mounts. And I may have to take a quick trip out and get some live moss before I start embarking on several mounts at a time, because I've got so little live moss left there won't be enough, which means either don't have any or go and get some, so I might have to take a trip out. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.